Two small back-to-back earthquakes rattling the Bay Area tonight within just minutes of each other, according to USGS.
These earthquakes, and scientists at the U.S. Geological Survey tell me the closer you live to the coast.
The San Francisco Bay Area has recently experienced two earthquakes, both with a magnitude of 3.7, the latest one near Pleasant Hill at a depth of 7 miles. A stronger 4.5 magnitude quake also hit near Pleasant Hill, making people from San Francisco to Sacramento feel the shaking. Could they be linked to deeper seismic activity? And what does it mean for the Bay Area? Join us as we take a closer look at the two earthquakes that shook San Francisco and explore what might be happening. The twin quakes. A small earthquake with a magnitude of 3.7 struck off the San Francisco coast early on a Friday morning, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. In a surprising twist, the San Francisco Bay Area has experienced two earthquakes of the same strength in just 72 hours. The most recent tremor hit near Pleasant Hill at a depth of about 7 miles and measured a magnitude of 4. People from San Francisco to Sacramento felt the shaking, sparking concerns. Let's take a closer look at the two earthquakes that rocked the Bay Area and explore what could be causing them. In the last few days, the region has been rattled, not by its usual tech news or housing debates, but by the unpredictable power of nature. Two quakes, both with a magnitude of 3.7, struck the area, one on Friday and another on Sunday morning. The earthquake on Sunday happened at 8:50 a.m. While many locals were sipping their weekend coffee or heading out for a jog, the ground beneath them jolted. The epicenter was near Concord, California, at a depth of roughly 9 miles. While the shaking was light, it was felt widely, from San Francisco to Sacramento, including Concord, Vacaville, and parts of the Delta region. Although not powerful, the tremor made its presence known. The unsettling part is that this earthquake came just 2 days after the first one, also measuring 3.7, which struck off the Pacific coast near San Francisco. The Friday earthquake, which had a depth of about 5 miles, occurred just a few miles east of the San Francisco Zoo. Thankfully, both people and animals at the zoo were unharmed. The zoo's emergency procedures worked so well that even the flamingos remained calm. However, Friday's tremor didn't stand alone. It was followed by two smaller quakes measuring 3.0 and 2.5 that same morning. While these smaller tremors didn't cause much alarm, they added to the growing sense of curiosity about this unusual chain of seismic activity. Residents of San Francisco are used to surprises, whether it's new tech startups or the ever-changing geological forces beneath them. The city's newly elected mayor, Daniel Lurie, acted quickly after Friday's quake. He reassured the community, emphasizing that safety would be his top priority. "I promise to make the safety of San Franciscans my priority as mayor," he said. City officials and first responders immediately got to work, ensuring that everyone was safe and secure, just as they had promised. Is this just a one-time event, or are we witnessing the start of a trend? Let's explore further. The 1906 earthquake. Seismologists point out that although it's uncommon for two earthquakes of similar strength to strike so close together, it doesn't necessarily mean something worse is coming. The Bay Area sits on numerous fault lines, so smaller quakes happen quite frequently. Let's rewind to the tragic morning of April 18, 1906. At 5:12 a.m., San Francisco was violently awakened by one of the most devastating earthquakes in U.S. history. In less than a minute, the city was brought to its knees. Buildings crumbled and chaos spread through the streets. But what followed was even worse. As the ground trembled, massive fires broke out, burning the city for the next 3 days and leaving behind a desolate wasteland. By the time the fires were finally under control, over 3,000 lives had been lost. Nearly 80% of the city was destroyed, and more than 225,000 people were left homeless. This wasn't just a natural disaster, it was a wake-up call. It forced engineers, scientists, and city planners to rethink how cities could be designed to withstand such catastrophic events. It also became a symbol of resilience, showing that even in the face of overwhelming destruction, communities could rebuild and emerge stronger. The earthquake itself struck without warning. The San Andreas Fault ruptured, sending shockwaves across California. The shaking lasted just under a minute, but it was enough to tear apart buildings, roads, and entire neighborhoods. At the time, building codes were nowhere near as advanced as they are today. Many structures in San Francisco were made from unreinforced brick and wood, which couldn't handle the violent shaking. Skyscrapers swayed, roads cracked, and entire blocks collapsed into rubble. The damage wasn't limited to San Francisco alone. Cities like San Jose and Santa Rosa also endured heavy destruction. However, the true devastation came after the earthquake when fires erupted throughout the city. Gas lines broke, stoves tipped over, and sparks from downed electrical wires ignited huge flames. The situation was made worse by the fact that San Francisco's water system was also destroyed, leaving firefighters without enough water to control the fires. For 3 days, firestorms ravaged the city. Landmarks like City Hall, entire business districts, and thousands of homes were consumed by flames. People fled to open spaces like Golden Gate Park, the Presidio, and the beaches, where they set up makeshift camps to escape the inferno. When the fires finally died down, San Francisco was left in ruins. More than half the population, over 225,000 people, had lost their homes. They lived in tents, shelters, or whatever structures still stood. The U.S. Army set up relief stations, providing food, water, and medical assistance. Despite the overwhelming destruction, the people of San Francisco refused to give up. Rebuilding began almost immediately. Wealthy businessmen, government officials, and everyday citizens worked together to restore the city. Within just a few years, new buildings rose from the ashes, and San Francisco was thriving again. However, there was a major cover-up. City officials focused more on the fire damage than the earthquake itself, downplaying the quake's impact to avoid scaring away potential investors. As a result, for decades, people blamed the fires more than the earthquake for the city's devastation. The 1906 earthquake was a turning point in the science of earthquakes and engineering. For the disaster, the full extent of the San Andreas Fault's dangers wasn't fully understood. Afterwards, scientists studied it in detail, leading to improved earthquake prediction methods and early warning systems. Engineers also took away valuable lessons. New buildings in San Francisco were designed to be more earthquake-resistant, using stronger materials and flexible structures. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake was more than just a natural disaster. It was a pivotal moment in the city's history. In the face of unimaginable destruction, the people of San Francisco proved their resilience, coming together to rebuild smarter and stronger. Over a century later, the scars of that disaster can still be seen in history books, museums, and the city's landscape. But one thing is clear: San Francisco learned from its past and is prepared for whatever the future holds. No matter what the earth throws its way. 19 on Loma Prieta earthquake. On October 17, 1989 at 5:04 p.m., just as people were heading home from work and baseball fans were settling in for Game 3 of the World Series, the ground suddenly began to shake. In just a few seconds, the Loma Prieta earthquake hit the San Francisco Bay Area, unleashing chaos and destruction. Buildings crumbled, freeways buckled, and a section of the iconic Bay Bridge collapsed. Though the quake only lasted 15 seconds, the impact would be unforgettable. With a magnitude of 6.9, it wasn't the biggest earthquake California had ever experienced, but it left one of the deepest scars in modern history. It caused 63 deaths, injured thousands, and resulted in billions of dollars in damage. What made this earthquake especially memorable was that it was broadcast live on television. Millions of viewers were tuned in to watch the San Francisco Giants and Oakland A's face-off in Game 3 of the 1989 World Series at Candlestick Park. Suddenly, the broadcast cut out. Inside the stadium, fans felt the ground tremble and saw the stadium lights sway. Initially, some thought it was just part of the excitement of the game, but soon they realized that the shaking wasn't stopping. The lights went out, and for the first time, a World Series game was postponed due to an earthquake. Meanwhile, outside the stadium, the real disaster was unfolding. Freeways and bridges were hit hardest, with the Cypress Street Viaduct in Oakland becoming the symbol of the destruction. The double-decker highway collapsed, trapping dozens of cars beneath the wreckage and claiming 42 lives. Rescuers worked tirelessly for hours to pull survivors from the rubble. Another devastating moment was the partial collapse of the Bay Bridge, which connects San Francisco and Oakland. A 50-foot section of the upper deck plummeted onto the lower deck, becoming one of the most striking images of the disaster. Miraculously, only one person died on the bridge, but the collapse revealed a major issue. Many of the region's critical structures weren't built to survive a major quake. In San Francisco's Marina District, the damage was even worse. The ground itself turned to liquid in a process called liquefaction, causing buildings to sink, tilt, and in some cases, collapse. Fires erupted from broken gas lines, adding to the devastation. Firefighters had to pump water from the bay just to put out the flames. In total, the earthquake caused about $10 billion in damages, leaving thousands homeless. In a strange twist of fate, the timing of the quake helped save lives. If it had struck an hour later when more people would have been on the roads, the death toll could have been much higher. The fact that it occurred during the World Series meant many people had left work early to watch the game, avoiding the traffic that would have been heavy at rush hour. The aftermath of the 1989 earthquake led to a major shift in how California approached earthquake safety. Engineers began reinforcing old buildings to make them more resistant to shaking. Bridges and freeways were redesigned to flex and absorb shock rather than collapse. Emergency response systems were improved, ensuring faster help in future disasters. The Loma Prieta earthquake reminded everyone in the Bay Area that California lives on borrowed time when it comes to earthquakes. Though terrifying, the event led to vital safety improvements that have likely saved lives in subsequent quakes. The Bay Bridge was rebuilt and reinforced, and the people who lived through it will never forget those 15 seconds of pure chaos. The next earthquake that happened was even bigger. Let's explore. 1868, Hayward earthquake. The 1868 Hayward earthquake was one of the most devastating events in California's early history. It struck on October 21, 1868, with a powerful magnitude of 6.8 to 7.0. The quake originated along the Hayward Fault, which runs through the eastern part of the San Francisco Bay Area. Although the earthquake lasted only about 30 seconds, its effects were far-reaching and destructive, particularly in the towns of Hayward, San Leandro, and Oakland. At the time, the region's infrastructure was very basic, making the damage even worse. Buildings collapsed, roads were destroyed, and local businesses were severely disrupted. One of the main reasons for the devastation was that many structures weren't built to withstand earthquakes. Most buildings in the affected areas were made of brick and stone, without the steel reinforcements that would help them survive the shaking. As a result, the intense tremors caused walls to crack, chimneys to fall, and entire homes to be reduced to rubble. In San Leandro, the two-story brick courthouse in Alameda County completely collapsed, showing just how vulnerable buildings were in the region. Oakland and even San Francisco also suffered damage, with cracked walls and broken windows becoming common sights. The human toll of the earthquake was tragic, with at least 30 people killed and many others injured. Most of the fatalities occurred in buildings that were poorly constructed, and many victims were crushed by falling debris. However, because the population was much smaller back then than it is today, the number of deaths was relatively low. Many survivors were left without homes, and local businesses faced huge financial losses as they struggled to rebuild. Despite the tragedy, the 1868 earthquake acted as a powerful warning about the seismic risks in the Bay Area. Today, scientists know that the Hayward Fault is still one of the most dangerous faults in California, with the potential for another major earthquake shortly. Back in 1868, this earthquake was sometimes referred to as the Great San Francisco Earthquake, until the even larger 1906 quake took the title. Today, advancements in engineering, better building codes, and early warning systems have been put in place to help reduce the impact of future earthquakes. However, experts still stress the importance of being prepared for the worst, especially for people living near the Hayward Fault Zone. Past to present impact of earthquakes. From the devastating 1906 earthquake that nearly wiped out the city to the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, which struck during the World Series, past seismic events have had a huge impact on how San Francisco plans its buildings, prepares for emergencies, and sets engineering standards. These historic disasters have taught us valuable lessons that continue to shape how we approach the threat of earthquakes today, especially since recent tremors in the region remind us of the ever-present danger of major earthquakes along the San Andreas and Hayward faults. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which had a powerful magnitude of 7.8, remains one of the most destructive natural disasters in U.S. history. It caused massive damage, fires that burned for days, and forced hundreds of thousands of people from their homes. In response, San Francisco adopted strict building codes, created detailed emergency plans, and reinforced the structures of bridges, skyscrapers, and even historic buildings to withstand future quakes. Similarly, the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake, which hit during the World Series, caused severe damage to highways, bridges, and older buildings. It led to major improvements in how we retrofit buildings to survive earthquakes and stricter engineering rules for new construction. The effects of these disasters can still be seen today. Older buildings that were damaged in past quakes have been rebuilt or reinforced to be stronger, while newer, more resilient structures have been put in place. The Bay Bridge, which partially collapsed during the 1989 quake, was completely rebuilt to handle future seismic activity. In addition, modern high-rise buildings are designed to withstand the violent shaking that comes with a strong earthquake. Public transportation systems, such as BART and Muni, have also been upgraded to reduce service disruptions during a quake. These improvements show how lessons from past earthquakes continue to shape San Francisco's preparations for future seismic threats. Smaller tremors and moderate earthquakes in recent years remind us that the Bay Area and Southern California remain highly vulnerable. Scientists warn that a major earthquake along the San Andreas or Hayward Fault could happen at any time, which makes the lessons from past disasters even more important. Today, technology has advanced to help reduce the impact of earthquakes. Early warning systems like Shake Alert have been developed to give residents more time to prepare, potentially saving lives and reducing damage. Still, the risks remain high, and preparedness is an ongoing effort. Many older buildings have yet to be retrofitted, posing a danger, especially in crowded neighborhoods. As the Bay Area's population grows, the potential for greater damage from a large quake increases. Experts stress the importance of emergency preparedness and advise residents to keep survival kits, secure heavy furniture, and create family safety plans. The lasting impact of past earthquakes has shaped San Francisco's approach to earthquake resilience. The devastation caused by the 1906 and 1989 earthquakes led to major advancements in building codes, infrastructure safety, and public awareness. With each new tremor, the city is reminded of its vulnerability, but ongoing efforts to reinforce buildings, improve warning systems, and educate the public are essential. The lessons of the past continue to guide our preparations, helping to minimize damage and protect lives when the next big earthquake strikes. So, what might be the scientific explanation for the seismic activities? Let's take a closer look to find out. The science behind the earthquake. San Francisco and the surrounding Bay Area are some of the most earthquake-prone areas in the world because they sit on a network of faults. These faults make earthquakes happen often. The cause of these earthquakes is tied to the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates, pressure building up along fault lines, and changes in the Earth's surface that cause shaking. Understanding these forces is important for predicting future earthquakes and preparing for them. The main reason for earthquakes in San Francisco is the San Andreas Fault System. This large fault marks the boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. It runs through California and is behind some of the biggest earthquakes in the state's history, such as the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. The San Andreas Fault is a strike-slip fault, meaning the two plates slide past each other horizontally. However, this movement isn't smooth. As the plates move, pressure builds up, and when that pressure is released suddenly, it causes an earthquake. Recent earthquakes in San Francisco and the Bay Area are linked to other faults, like the Hayward, Rogers Creek, and Calaveras faults. The Hayward Fault is particularly dangerous because it is locked, meaning it is holding back a lot of pressure that could lead to a major earthquake soon. Scientists think an earthquake of magnitude 6.7 or more could hit the region within the next few decades based on patterns from past earthquakes. To study and predict earthquakes, scientists use tools like seismometers and GPS technology. Seismometers detect ground movement, while GPS tracks tiny shifts in the Earth's surface caused by faults. Scientists also use past earthquake data and paleoseismology, the study of ancient earthquakes, to predict future quakes. These methods help experts understand earthquake cycles and how likely a big earthquake is to occur. One of the biggest breakthroughs in earthquake science is the development of early warning systems like Shake Alert. This system can detect an earthquake within seconds and warn people before the shaking starts. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, runs the system using a network of sensors to pinpoint the earthquake's location and end size. giving people a few extra seconds to take cover. While Shake Alert can't predict earthquakes in advance, it's a big improvement in earthquake preparedness. What do you think about the 2 earthquakes that shook San Francisco? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe.